IQ Smart Parent is made possible in part by the McCune Foundation and the Grable Foundation.
It's been 50 years since the first moon landing, and on today's IQ Smart Parent, we're all about outer space. Discover fascinating facts about the Apollo 11 mission and see artifacts used by NASA astronauts. Learn about apps and online resources to build your child's science skills, and then we'll show you gear that lets you do some stargazing. This tech ranges from simple to sophisticated, and we even have tools kids can make on their own. It's a celebration of what's up in the sky, so stay with us because IQ Smart Parent starts right now. Welcome to IQ Smart Parent. I'm your host, Darieth Chisholm. At precisely 4:18 p.m. on July 20th, 1969, astronaut Neil Armstrong's voice crackled over the speakers at NASA's Mission Control.
The Eagle has landed.
It's been 50 years since the Apollo 11 moon landing, and we thought we'd celebrate by devoting today's episode to getting kids excited about Earth space science. The Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum is presenting a traveling exhibition called Destination Moon, and our first guests are from one of just 4 museums nationally to host this exhibit. Welcome Ann Mazaraz and Dr. Mary Ruth Letwich. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So Ann, let's start with you. You're the curator at the Heinz History Center in Pittsburgh, which of course is an affiliate and brought this here. So what are some of the highlights of this exhibition?
Well, one of the most exciting things is for the first time in 50 years, that space capsule, the Command Module Columbia, will actually leave the Smithsonian and tour the nation. So that is the only piece of the entire rocket to return to Earth. So to have that is incredible, along with other flown materials like Michael Collins helmet and gloves and all sorts of really fascinating space objects.
And people will be able to get up close and personal with these items, which of course, as you said, really if you've not visited there, you wouldn't know.
Right, and that's one of the opportunities is to see these treasures. A lot of people never in their lifetime will have the chance to go to DC and actually visit Air and Space. So to be able to take these out across the country and bring them to the people is a real gift from the Smithsonian.
It certainly is, and when we think about how kids and parents can appreciate this wonderful learning opportunity, you have to feel excited about it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think it's a great opportunity for us to share a story that kids kind of an innate curiosity about, this idea of the space, and they can look out and they can see the moon at night, but the idea of how we actually went there, and every piece of that, the various elements that allowed us to get from Earth to the moon in such a short period of time. Actually, they were really working on this project for about 10 years. And it was only about 60 years after we had even flown for the first time. And that's, I think, what's really exciting is it gives us an opportunity to tell that story, get parents excited, get them to think about, in some cases, the grandparents who might have experienced and sat huddled around their televisions when they got to see the moon landing in '69. I think that's the kind of excitement that we hope all of our visitors will be able to experience.
Yeah, so let's take a look at some of the items that you brought for us today and what's here.
Sure. Do you want to start with the historic piece?
Well, one of the things we've discovered is space toys and space books become a gateway for the people who become astronauts or the people who become fascinated with space. So this is great for parents to know is that, you know, in the 1960s or the 1950s, J. App, the space shuttle astronaut from Pittsburgh, from our town, who went on 4 missions, he started off with books about space, and that's what got him interested. And then he got into model rocketry. So for us, this is great to say, here's a learning opportunity anyone can use.
Yeah, and there's a range of books that are great resources. The one that we use most typically is called Moonshot, and it's how we actually got to the moon with the Apollo 11 mission and getting kids to understand the sense of scope and scale of the work that was happening and how big the Saturn V rocket was that ultimately took them to the moon. It's about the size of a football field in real life. And imagining that blasting off and leaving at about 25,000 miles an hour is something that gets conveyed in these storybooks really in an exciting way. And also thinking about the people. It wasn't just the astronauts and not just NASA that helped get them to the moon, right? It was about 400,000 people that helped get that team to the moon. So we have Team Moon, and then we also have the work of Margaret Hamilton featured in one of the books, which is really exciting. She's one of the leading computer programmers that writes the code for most of this mission. And as a parent, the thing I enjoy most in the book is that her story actually starts with her dad asking her questions and getting her to prompt her curiosity, and that's what drives everything. And I think to Anne's point, the curiosity that parents spark in their kids, particularly around moon and around space, is something that we see in so many of the stories that gets echoed across what ultimately compels people to go to space. It's very often those early interactions with toys, with storybooks, and their parents' questions.
And I could imagine this also is going to really encourage a lot of kids who perhaps hadn't been thinking about science or science and math or space, that, you know, just experiencing this alone may have them thinking, wow, I could be an astronaut, or I could be one of the people to help get the next set of astronauts to the moon.
And one of the things that we've enjoyed doing as we're leading up to the exhibit is getting kids excited about space and getting them to think about those opportunities and providing them some hands-on activities. So even things like making model rockets. Anne mentioned that model rocketry becomes one of the things that inspires many people that go on to become astronauts, including Jay Apt, who is featured in the exhibit. And having kids work on creating a rocket that they can then actually shoot off. We use an air rocket launcher for these, but they still go about 100 feet in the air. Kids are amazed when they see how far their rockets will fly.
After they've made them, right?
After they've made them, yeah. So that's an opportunity that parents can even do at home. So the range of different tools that you can use as parents to get your kids really excited about that next frontier. And of course, in the 60s, that frontier was the moon. But now we're headed to Mars.
One of the things we forget that space changed was our popular culture. So whether it's Tang or astronaut ice cream that people still eat at the ballpark, or it's toys or television lost in space. So it's this sense of wanting to own a piece, have an action figure that's actually an astronaut. These astronauts became heroes to a lot of kids.
Yeah, and so what would be your advice to talking with parents who maybe, you know, lack their confidence around talking about science or moon exploration? How would you encourage them to really get involved and have these conversations?
I think one of the things that's important to realize is that you don't have to be an expert to get your kids excited and get them involved. So first, don't be scared. As a parent, I think it's hard when you don't always have the answers, but find opportunities to learn together. With my own children, as I've been preparing for the exhibition, we've spent a lot of time reading books and they've become excited. And I think when you can share that learning and then have something that's tangible, so having something that they can actually build, that they can create, that helps make that learning real. And that's what will get kids really excited.
Yeah, and what's your thought on that?
I think there are simple ways, as Mary Ruth said, to engage kids. It not necessarily the experience of, not every kid wants to be an astronaut or go to space, but of exploring. And that's really who those first astronauts were. They were explorers. So whether it's the simple principle of the weightlessness of space, you know, those space rocks that the astronauts brought back weighed 48 pounds on Earth, they weighed 3 pounds or 6 pounds in space. So there's this very simple compare and contrast exercise that any parent can do with simple things they find around the house that demonstrates some of these concepts that might be more complex, breaks them down, and makes them easy and fun.
All right, well, thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to go over and check it out. Coming up, discover technology you and your family can use for stargazing at home and learn how your kids can make some of those tools. But up first, space exploration is a great way to learn about the solar system, but it's also a great way to teach kids about the fascinating and fragile planet we live on. Check this out.
At 15 seconds, guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
It's been 50 years since the Apollo 11 mission made history, but 21st century families can still be inspired by it And they can use the moon landing's anniversary as a way to launch kids' interest in Earth-space science and careers.
Armstrong is on the moon, Neil Armstrong.
It really is about a new perspective and how we see the Earth. The astronauts on Apollo 8 talked about seeing the Earth for the first time, this gorgeous green and blue marble floating in this blackness of space, and how fragile it seemed and how delicate. So really it's a just totally different way of looking at our home.
Katrine Halpern is the project director of the Smithsonian traveling exhibition Destination Moon, the Apollo 11 mission. She's putting the final touches on the exhibit before it opens at the Heinz History Center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Halpern says museums, libraries, and online resources are great ways to engage kids.
As parents talking about what it might be like to travel to Mars, ask them to use their imaginations. Take a walk in the evening and say, gosh, look at the moon tonight. Remember when we went to the museum, and then start the story from there.
Here's some of the stories trending this week.
Online resources, whether it's through NASA, whether it's through the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum. The first step is for parents to say, you know what, I don't know, but let's find out together. Let's look it up. And in that way, parents can engage with their children, but they can also teach them good practices for looking at things online, learning about reputable sources, learning to be able to sort out what's real and what maybe they should take a second look at and find another source to confirm. That's one of the biggest skills that you can teach a child. Be curious, be engaged.
And what better way to spark that curiosity than to explore the command module that brought the astronauts to the moon and back again.
Behind me is the command module Columbia, and this is the spaceship that the Apollo 11 astronauts traveled to the moon in. And be very clear about this, they did not go down to the lunar surface in this spacecraft. Rather, the spacecraft circled the moon while Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin descended down to the surface in Eagle. And then after they were on the lunar surface for a while, they came back up, they reconnected, and then they traveled back to Earth in this spaceship.
The command module is the only part of the entire Saturn V rocket to return safely to the Earth, and families can explore it inside and out online.
The Smithsonian has a wonderful office that digitizes objects, and we were so fortunate to work with them to do 3D scans of both the exterior and interior of the command module Columbia. So parents can go online with their children. You can look and see what the interior looks like, and you can talk about all of the types of switches and the controls. We're at this amazing point in time where we can look back on the 50th anniversary of the first landing on the moon, but there's all kinds of things that are happening or just about to happen.
Families can watch those breakthroughs in space exploration as they happen. NASA offers live streams showing everything from up-close views of space travel to interviews with astronauts who are currently on missions in space.
I'm hoping what we find is a lot of information that will help us eventually, continue our path towards Mars.
Parents can also talk to their kids about everyday products and technology we use here on Earth, but that were developed thanks to the space program.
There's a lot that is under the classification of spin-off technology. There's a wonderful publication that NASA produces on a yearly basis, and they have since 1976, that talks about spin-offs of different kinds of products. They pick the top 50 products.
These spin-off technologies span industries from health and medicine to transportation, public safety, environmental tech, and consumer goods. Just a few include GPS navigation, enriched baby food formula, memory foam mattresses, cochlear implants for the deaf, and the translucent ceramic used in invisible braces. A type of gold coating developed for a Mars orbiter instrument is even now used on the famous Oscar statuette given at the Academy Awards. Halpern also suggests parents point out to their kids that products developed through the space program really represent the hard work and innovations of a team of people from a range of careers.
We have all of these amazing objects, whether it's as large as the command module Columbia or as small as a switch, and each one tells human stories of any one or a number of the 400,000 people that worked to make the Apollo project possible. Most of the public immediately thinks of the 3 astronauts, but there were seamstresses, there were barge captains, there were map makers, there were engineers of all kinds. There were so many people that were involved in this project. I hope their takeaway is that when we have a big, complicated problem to solve, if we all chip in and work at it, we can achieve it. Today, for young people who are thinking about going into the world of new space travel, you don't just need to be a scientist. You can bring all sorts of different skill sets and be successful and help work towards the next frontier in space.
Be sure to check out our website for more resources to help you and your family explore and appreciate our solar system. Right now, I'm excited to welcome our next guest, Ralph Crewe, the Program Development Coordinator at the Carnegie Science Center. Ralph, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We've got a lot we're going to talk about, but first I want to explore why it's so important for families, particularly parents and children, to really explore the sky and our solar system.
Well, I think it's a really exciting connection to science. You know, getting excited about science is something that's important at an early age, and astronomy is excellent for that. You know, there's nothing much more exciting than seeing the rings of Saturn for the first time. You know, I get to show people that a lot, and the light that comes into a kid's eyes when they first see it and they realize space is real and it's like really out there is great. It's also a wonderful activity that anyone can do. You don't need all the fancy equipment in the world to do it, although there are different pieces of equipment that help. And it's just something that you can do outdoors. You don't need to have computers or TV screens or anything like that. It's just a beautiful outdoor family activity that I think is really valuable and something that more people should be doing.
So what is informal science education, and what can parents do to really bring this curiosity out in their children?
Right, so the informal science education that we do at the Science Center is something that anyone can do anywhere. It's really just exploring science topics in a way that's exciting, you know, and it's what develops the taste for science that gets people later on into formal science, right? So before I'm going to be doing calculations and math and trying to solve really difficult problems, it helps if as a young person I just get this spark of curiosity. What is that light in the sky? How do the stars work? Where do the planets go? Why can we only see some things at night and not during the day? And all sorts of questions like that, which I think are you know, critical to getting that sort of curious, inquisitive character out of kids. And once kids have that, you know, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, no pun intended. But so basically with the naked eye though, what can we see? I mean, I think most people assume that we need really expensive equipment, but we can see certain things with the naked eye.
Absolutely. Naked eye astronomy, which is the only kind of astronomy people did for thousands of years, has a lot of really rewarding things. Of course, observing the moon is easy to do with the unaided eye, but you can actually see many of the major planets as well. Planets like Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn are all visible to the naked eye. And especially Jupiter and Venus are very bright, brighter than any of the visible stars in the sky, in fact. And they move around. You actually can, you know, check out where they're going to be in the sky relative to what time of year it is and where they are in their years around the sun.
And how do we do that though? How do we determine where to look and what we're looking at?
Well, there's a lot more options than there used to be. A lot of people have an app on their phone that can be very helpful. Of course, I always recommend visiting your local planetarium. You know, at the Science Center, we're always very happy to show people where things are in the sky. Star parties are another great option. So either at a Science Center or even just a local astronomy club, you can go out into the field with people who are already really into it. And you know, nobody likes talking about telescopes more than these like telescope people who are out at the star parties. Or you can even just Google it. You know, honestly, if you just Google search where is Mars right now, you know, you'll find it.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty awesome. And then you can go outside, orient yourself, maybe find a constellation or two that you recognize, and then realize that that bright red light over there is Mars.
That's great, and the apps, of course, are very helpful. But you did bring some great telescopes, so
So I brought a range of astronomical equipment at different levels. So depending on what your budget is or how committed you are to it or how much you want to invest, there are a lot of different options. This is called a refractor, and this is a really lower end telescope, something that you can get for like $100. And we call it a refractor because it uses lenses to refract or bend light to collect the light. And this is a great starter telescope. You can take this on a camping trip. It's really lightweight, it's easy to move around. And with this scope, you can easily see rings of Saturn, moons of Jupiter. You can see individual mountains on the moon.
Wow.
Really, really cool
That's
stuff.
fascinating, yeah.
And a lot of what goes on is actually in this little bit. The only magnifier comes out of the eyepiece. A lot of people don't realize this is just about collecting light. It's not about magnifying. If it was magnification that mattered, all we'd have to do is point a microscope at the sky, right? But we don't. It's the width of this tube, or the aperture. Now, the bigger the aperture, the better the telescope. Over here is a much higher end telescope, and you can see it's got a much wider barrel.
Now back to this one,
Yeah.
the smaller one. Is this something that young children can use and handle?
Totally, yeah. I mean, you want to be careful. Things can break. One of the nice things about this is that it's not so expensive that if something were to break on it, it'd be a disaster. And the eyepiece, I would say, is probably the most delicate thing. So you maybe want to have a grown-up install that. But a kid can easily swing this around and point it at the sky, and I think that's pretty neat. You can get hands-on. But of course, the astronomical instrument that I love telling people about the most is probably just binoculars. A lot of people underestimate how great binoculars are as a tool to explore the night sky. If you have these on a really steady enough surface, you can even see some of the moons of Jupiter with this, right? These are amazing.
And those are just basic
These are just like bird watching binoculars. A lot of people have these. Take them out. If you go on a camping trip to somewhere with really dark skies, you can scan the skies. They're easy to use. They're easy to aim.
And certainly a lot more affordable than the
Right.
big guy over there. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, speaking of affordability, there are even some things that you can make at home.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you two different kinds of celestial clocks that we do. The first one is a sun clock here. You can get this at home. You can print it out just on a piece of cardstock. And then you cut out this big rectangle, you fold it along the dotted line, and you put a string in it. Looks like this. So this is essentially a sundial, right? You can point this to the northern sky and then let the sun cast a shadow across this string. Now, as the day goes on, that shadow will move.
And I can see it moving.
You can see it here.
And
That's
I'll
not
be
the
able to
actual
catch
sun.
it. Yeah.
So the time's not right here. But you can actually get the time down to about 15 minutes of accuracy.
Yeah.
You can actually use this pretty accurately to tell the time.
And speaking of being able to look things up, this is available at our website, so
Yeah.
you can certainly download it, print it,
Anyone can make this.
make it very simple, and it's just string and cardboard.
Just string and cardboard.
Yeah.
You could even use printer paper if you don't have cardboard.
Yeah, and that's
Now,
good.
another clock that uses the distant stars here
That's this one.
is our star clock. Now, this is a little bit trickier to make. Well, first of all, you have to cut out a circle, and I don't know how your scissors skills are. That's not always easy. And then you cut out a smaller circle in here and you make a little notch in it. Now, the patterns here, what you want to do is go outside at night when you can see the stars, and you'll see there are some very recognizable groups of stars here. We have the Big Dipper. The Big Dipper always points to the north. You can actually, if you follow the bucket of the Big Dipper here, that dotted line points right at the North Star, so you can find the north. So even if, I say go out and look at the north, if you don't know where that is, you can find that with this, which I think is kind of neat. And then what you want to do is take what time of year it is and put that on top. So, and then once you have that upright, you keep August upright, you hold the back circle still, and then you can swing this around. And by the way, this is fastened just with some of these little brass brads that you can get at Staples or wherever. And it doesn't need to be this. Anything that can sort of allow this to spin. So even a thumbtack with a cork on the back would work. And then you just basically move the stars around until the Big Dipper looks the same here as it does in the sky. You just match it up, and then you can see what time it is, right? So between 10 and 11 p.m., the Big Dipper will be low in the sky over here, and Cassiopeia will be rising over there.
Wow, and this is called a star clock.
A star clock, right? And you can use this any time of year.
We've got star parties, and star clocks.
Star parties, star clocks, star everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how does this have kids really appreciate the science?
Well, I mean, I think getting hands-on is important. A lot of times, you know, when people go to museums and are in classrooms, we feel sort of hands-off, like we're not allowed to really interact with it. But you can get your hands on a telescope, and the light that hits your eye is actually coming from the planet. I always love to look at Saturn and remember that the light that is hitting my eye took an hour and a half to get from Saturn to me. And those actual particles of light are that old. If I'm looking at a distant galaxy, sometimes it's millions of years old light. And that's just really exciting. I don't know anyone who doesn't get excited about that. And once you get excited about science, that's where innovation and discovery comes from. And honestly, I think scientific-minded people make great decisions and are more fun to be around. They're curious people and they're a lot of fun. So I think that it's a really critical thing to get kids excited about science, and space has got to be one of the best ways to do it.
Well, thank you so much for being here. This was so exciting.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for being here too. We hope today's program has inspired you to take one giant leap into enjoying space exploration with your family. And we hope you'll tune in again for more IQ Smart Parent.
Want to learn more about IQ Smart Parent? Visit us online at iqsmartparent.org for more episodes and additional tools and resources. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest to share your thoughts on being a 21st century parent. IQ Smart Parent is made possible in part by the McCune Foundation and the Grable Foundation.